咁當中要考我哋嘅就自不然就係適應性特徵，個結構、特徵、功能拉上關係啦。咁同一時間咧都 download 定個溫書 checklist 啦。2022年第8條題目係有關於植物嘅，我哋要研究嘅兩款植物啦，高草啦同埋穀類農作物咧，原來都係屬於同一科，同埋咧佢哋都係源於同一個祖先嘅。穀類農作物咧就由人工選擇去種植出嚟嘅，咁佢嘅種子就可以作為我哋嘅食糧啦。草原上面嘅高草咧，根嘅深度咧就由1.5米到4.5米不等嘅，而穀類農作物嘅根咧就好少超過1米。咁下面呢兩張相咧就顯示咗高草啦，同埋穀類農作物佢哋嗰個深根系同埋淺根系嗰個深度啦。啱啱講完條題目啦，有啲字眼咧，我哋要喺個腦入面咧浮現出嚟噶啦。例如啦，呢兩款植物咧都係源於同一個祖先啦。人工選擇啦，呢啲字眼啊，提醒我哋呢條題目其實考緊啲乜嘢呢？就係考緊我哋啦，識唔識得分翻自然選擇同埋人工選擇啦？高草呢，就係自然選擇所得出嚟，佢哋就演化咗一個深根系嘅；而穀類農作物呢，就由人工選擇出嚟，而佢哋呢係發展咗一個淺嘅根系嘅。咁而家入題目啦 ，Part A1 呢就講啦，草原呢係指一啲冇樹木嘅平原。主要咧就生滿高草嘅，咁常見於一啲中度降雨量嘅地方啦。而高草咧就會進化成有深根系啦。咁呢個演化過程當中嘅選擇壓力係乜嘢呢？同埋高草嘅根生長去到泥土更加深處嘅話啦，究竟有啲咩嘅好處呢？有啲咩優勢呢？呢條題目啦，第一樣要考我哋嘅呢，就係究竟嗰個選擇壓力係乜嘢呢？原來就係嗰個水嘅供應啦，因為題目講到明啦，係中度降雨，即係話唔係零舍多。當然啦，佢唔係一定係好乾啦，咁但係佢未算於極度充足嘅水分呢，就梗噶啦。所以啦，中度降雨咧就暗示咗咧，原來嗰個水嘅供應咧就係啲植物需要面對嘅一個問題啦。咁所以一開始啦，個選擇壓力咧就係供水啦。呢條題目嘅第二個問題咧就係講高草嘅深根系會為佢哋帶嚟啲咩嘅優勢咧？咁你要諗下啦，有個深根系究竟算係咩優勢咧？你諗下喺個草原入面竟然係冇樹，你會諗啊，連樹都生唔到嘅地方，竟然啲高草可以生長到？咁其實你就要將根嘅功能啦，同個降雨拉翻上關係啦，自不然就係講吸水啦，係咪？所以一開始啦，個選擇壓力咧就係供水啦，就會導致到咧根佢就有個演化咯。呢條題目嘅第二個問題咧就係講高草嘅深根系會為佢哋帶嚟啲咩嘅優勢咧？咁你要諗下啦，有個深根系究竟算係咩優勢咧？你諗下喺個草原入面竟然係冇樹，你會諗啊，連樹都生唔到嘅地方，竟然啲高草可以生長到？咁其實你就要將根嘅功能啦，同個降雨拉翻上關係啦，自不然就係講吸水啦，係咪？啲樹喺個草原度生長唔到，因為佢中度降雨啊嘛。其實夠唔夠水呢？未至於好足夠。作為一棵樹咁大棵嘅話呢，佢真係需要好多水噶嘛。咁即係話啦，喺呢個地方佢個降雨佢個水嘅供應呢，係不足以支撐到啲樹嘅成長嘅。咁即係話啦，作為一棵高草，佢有一個深嘅根系，佢就可以插深啲，從而就吸多啲水。咁所以啦，對於深根系咧，係作為一個選擇嘅優勢，可以令到啲草咧喺個地下咧吸收多啲水。咁所以啦，睇翻呢個概念咯。嗱，今次咧佢冇特別去問到呢個物種形成嘅，但係最起碼嗰啲字眼你要學識。例如啦 ，favorable 嘅 characteristic， 即係話一個有優勢嘅、有好處嘅特徵，就令到啲高草咧有個高啲嘅生存率同埋繁殖，係咪？同意啦，啲高草就可以將呢個有好處嘅特性、深根系呢個特性咧，就傳俾下一代。咁唔單止條根會演化噶嘛，可能個葉啊、個莖啊都會有相對嘅演化嘅。久而久之啦，就變成咗高草同埋穀類農作物咧，就真係分開咗咯。同意啦，就令到咧高草同埋農作物咧，就由佢嘅共同祖先嗰度慢慢演化走咗兩條路咯。跟住啦，去到第二部分啦，從植物使用嘅能量嘅角度嚟睇咧，解釋翻點解穀類農作物嘅淺根系 會對啲農民嚟講係一個好處呢？喺呢度咧，都想提翻大家嘅，作為一個有好處嘅特性，佢不單止係喺自然選擇底下佢係有好處，所以係個自然選擇咗嚟，又或者人工選擇都可以揀一啲好嘅特性噶嘛。而呢個好嘅特性咧，有優勢嘅特性咧，係我哋話事嘅，係人話事嘅，唔係個自然界話事嘅。咁所以啦，對於淺根係對於農夫嚟講有啲咩嘅好處呢？咁首先你要諗下啦，一棵植物佢用啲能量同啲穀類農作物嘅收成有咩嘅關係呢？用少啲嘅能量去擺喺根嘅成長，或者相反嚟講啦，就可以有多啲嘅能量擺喺莖嘅成長。咁個莖嘅成長關棵植物嘅收成咩事呢？咁對於一棵植物嘅莖嘅成長啦，咁同佢嘅收成，同呢個穀類農作物嘅收成有冇咩嘅關係呢？自不然啦，喺個莖上面我哋有葉啦，塊葉啦就可以做光合作用。所以啦，一個能夠發展得好一啲嘅莖部咧，佢有多啲嘅葉啦，大塊啲嘅葉啦，就能夠做快啲嘅光合作用，產生多啲嘅嘢食。無論啦係儲存喺粒種子啊，儲存喺個果實啦，結果咧都係令到個農作物嘅收成咧係增加咗嘅。所以啦，一個深根系嘅植物同一個淺根系嘅植物，佢哋照同樣嘅陽光嘅話呢，根據呢一個邏輯呢，淺根系嘅植物呢，佢能夠有多啲嘅能量呢，係儲存喺個種子啦或者果實嗰處，咁啲農夫咪開心咯。然後啦，去到第二部分呢，就考翻我哋有關於適應性特徵啦。以下呢個顯微照片呢，就顯示咗穀類農作物根部嘅橫切面啦。有 X、Y 啦，有翻好習慣俾翻 label 先啦。X 咧就係木質導管 xylem vessel 啦。Y 咧就係 root hair 根毛啦，或者根毛細胞 root hair cell 啦。咁而家第一部分咧就要我哋完成翻個表啦，就顯示翻結構 X 同埋 Y 一個可以見得到嘅特徵，呢個特徵同佢嘅功能嘅關係啦。呢條題目啦就考翻我哋如何閱讀個圖像，點樣解讀佢啦。咁當中要考我哋嘅就自不然就係適應性特徵，個結構、特徵、功能拉上關係啦。咁啊，以前都有一段片咧就講概念整合嘅，咁啊快手睇翻段片溫下書。同一時間咧都 download 定個溫書 checklist 啦。咁我解完2022年就開始2023年嘅解卷噶啦。咁嗰陣時咧亦都會着手去講下2024年嘅 DSE Bio 咧，究竟個溫書 checklist 有啲咩嘅變化咯。咁啊敬請留意啦。咁啊對於木質導管嚟講啦，第一個適應性特徵咧就係佢係空心嘅管嚟嘅，就令到啦運水嘅時候咧就會少一啲嘅阻力。嗱，留意下，就唔係就係話因為 xylem vessel 咧佢係空心，所以咧佢就可以運水。嗱，係1、2、3、4，運水係佢嘅能力。我而家講嘅適應性特徵，即係話佢做呢個功能係做得好一啲，所以啦係運水嘅時候遇到少一啲嘅阻力啦。第二啦，就係佢有一個厚嘅細胞壁啦，就防止到木質導管咧係會塌陷嘅。嗱，因為咧當啲水向上抽嘅時候咧，其實佢都會形成咗一個拉力嘅。咁如果個木質導管嗰個細胞壁係太薄嘅話咧，成條木質導管就好似嗰啲膠袋，你一吸氣咧，吸氣嘅時候咧，佢會扁咗嘅。咁其實對棵植物嚟講啦，就會失去咗嗰個支撐嘅能力啦，係咪？一説咧，嗱，留意下。都睇清楚啦！嗱，書本咧佢就講嘅，一個厚啲嘅細胞壁咧，木質化咗嘅細胞壁咧，可以為棵植物咧提供一個支撐。嗱，係啱嘅，但係喺呢一條題目嚟講，我哋嘅重點係擺咗喺木質導管嗰處。仲有一個特徵啦，今次咧係講唔到嘅，就係喺呢個木質導管嘅細胞與細胞之間咧係冇咗一個細胞壁嘅末端嘅。咁啊，因為啦喺呢幅圖你淨係見到個橫切面啫嘛，你見到成條管咩？見唔到噶，所以呢個特徵咧係唔可以講嘅。跟住啦就去到根毛細胞咯，跟住啦就去到根毛啦。根毛有咩咁特別咧？就係好修長、好纖細、延長咗嘅，就可以令到佢能夠穿梭於泥土之間啦，同埋啦增加翻吸水、吸礦物質嘅表面面積啦。咁其餘嘅特性啦。根咧係分叉嘅，根嘅表皮嘅細胞咧係冇角質層咧去覆蓋住嘅，又或者啦，我哋見到有好多嘅根毛咧，今次都係唔可以講，因為佢淨係指住咗一條根毛啫嘛，佢冇指住好多條根毛。咁所以啦，今次咧我哋唯有講嘅咧就係望起上嚟根毛咧就係修長嘅、纖細嘅，咁我可以點樣幫棵植物去吸水吸好啲咧？嗱，記得翻啦，所謂 adaptive features 咧。 係有好多嗰啲 more 啊、better 啊呢啲咁嘅字眼嘅。所以記緊翻，當我哋去講適應性特徵嘅時候呢，我哋唔係話佢做到就算數，係能夠令佢做好啲。跟住啦，去到第二部分呢，就有關於水嘅吸收啦。題目就叫我哋去解釋翻啦，水係點樣由個構造 Y 運輸去到構造 X 嘅呢？所以成日提大家啦，有翻好習慣先啦。X 木質導管 ，Y 根毛細胞。成條題目就問翻我哋啦，原來啲水呢係點樣由根毛細胞去到木質導管嘅？同意啦，就考翻我哋滲透作用嘅定義啦。滲透作用就係指水嘅正向移動，就由一個高水勢嘅地方去到一個低水勢嘅地方，而當中呢係穿越咗一個差異滲透嘅膜嘅。譬如我哋講得要高水勢、低水勢，咁梗係要分得清啦。原來啦，木質導管呢就係一個低水勢嘅地方，而根毛細胞呢就係一個高水勢嘅地方。點解我會知啊？係因為滲透作用嘅定義就係咁講啊嘛，而題目都講到明嘅，啲水係由根毛細胞去到木質導管噶嘛，咁所以啦，自不然就係由一個高水勢嘅地方去低水勢啦，係咪？而呢條題目呢，仲有最重要一樣嘢就係考翻我哋蒸騰作用嘅重要性啦。咁記得翻蒸騰作用嘅重要性，其中一個就係產生蒸騰牽引力，就喺個木質導管去運送水同埋礦物質啦。喺呢度呢，我就要提翻大家有關於滲透作用嘅三部曲咯。咁啊，睇翻過往呢幾段片去學翻答題技巧啦。今次啦，佢就唔係問嗰啲薯條啊、紅血球，所以呢個思考鷹架呢，有兩步呢已經夠用噶啦。第一步呢，你就要講翻啦 ，X 同埋 Y 呢兩個結構佢哋嘅水勢有咩嘅差別，同埋解釋下。所以呢，我哋就要講翻啦，木質導管點解個水勢較為低呢？係因為有蒸騰作用，產生蒸騰牽引力，就喺翻1、2、3、4，從而啦就令到水分呢喺個木質導管附近抽走咗去。所以啦，啲水呢就由木質導管附近嘅細胞抽走咗啦。咁所以啦，木質導管自己嘅水勢就會低咗啦，就低過外面嘅細胞，例如 cortex cells 啦。而根毛細胞由於佢係可以吸水噶嘛，咁所以啦佢都有一個高嘅水勢。由於啦一邊係高水勢，一邊係低水勢，所以咧啲水咧就會由結構 Y 去到結構 X 個樹啦。就係我哋思考鷹架嘅第二步咯，就要描述翻水嘅正向移動啦。好，跟住啦，又嚟到一點出發啦。今次嘅題目咧就由根嘅系統咧開始去問我哋嘅，之後啦就考翻我哋有關於演化啦，同埋吸水嘅概念啦。先講演化啦，今次冇特別去問我哋嘅就係物種形成啦。咁啊，當然過往都有題目啦，問翻駱駝啊，問翻唔同嘅植物啦。咁大家咧可以睇翻片溫翻書咯。而有關於演化啦，嗱呢幾個字眼咧冇得唔學噶啦，隔離啦。基因變異啦、自然選擇啦，同埋人工選擇啦，中啦仲要牽涉整個機制同埋重要性，同埋最緊要就係適者生存啦。過程當中係牽涉咗選擇啊嘛，我無論你係自然選擇定係人工選擇，揀咩呢？有條件先可以揀噶嘛。個條件呢，就係選擇壓力啦，夠唔夠水啦，夠唔夠陽光啦，諸如此類啦。跟住啦就去到吸水咯。人哋問得你根嘅功能呢，都唔使審噶啦，其中一個大嘅功能就一定係吸水啦。咁根有啲咩嘅適應性特徵令到佢吸到水呢？仲未計問埋你個木質導管係咪？過往咧都有好多唔同嘅題目係問翻適應性特徵嘅，咁啊快手溫翻書咯。跟住啦就去到一個 hot topic 啦，然後啦兩者結合考我哋嘅呢，就係蒸騰作用啦，當中有蒸騰牽引力啦、滲透嘅概念啦，大家咧就要學識翻啦。咁所以啦見到一辣啊，都係有關於蒸騰作用嘅題目嚟嘅，係一個好熱門嘅題目嚟，大家快記得一定要溫咯。而呢條題目啦，有啲咩嘅變奏呢？又嚟貼下題咯。今次講得根嘅系統，又講吸水，又講演化，不其然我就想問下大家啦，講唔講到三個仙人掌嘅適應性特徵係容許佢可以喺沙漠嗰度生存嘅？沙漠係一個咩地方啊？乾㗎啦，降雨量低啦，同埋日頭嘅時候好熱嘅。同埋記緊解釋下呢三個適應性特徵點樣容許到佢喺呢個咁乾、咁熱、咁曬嘅地方生存。三個特徵分別就係根莖葉啦。而個提示俾埋大家啦，就係根莖葉各有一個適應性特徵嘅。喺留言區留低你答案，睇下你 concept 清唔清。Question 8 is about the plants, tall grasses and cereal crops. They belong to the same family and share a common ancestor. And the cereal crops have been artificially selected for agriculture, and their seed harvested as food. And the roots of the tall grasses in the grassland range in depth from 1.5 meter to 4.5 meters, while those of the cereal crops rarely exceed 1 meter. And the photograph shows the root depth of the tall grasses and the cereal crops under the same magnification. So we have the deep root system and the shallow root system. So for the whole question, we have some key terms. Common ancestor, artificially selected, tells us that this question may ask us about the evolution and the natural selection. It asks us to distinguish the natural selection from the artificial selection. Tall grasses evolved a deep root system based on the natural selection, and the cereal crops develop a shallow root system because of the artificial selection. And in part A1, grassland is a region of treeless plain which is mainly occupied by tall grasses. It's usually found in the regions with moderate rainfall, and the tall grasses have evolved with a deep root system. So what is the selection pressure involved in this evolutionary process? What is the advantage of the greater root depth in the tall grasses? So this question is checking us the concept. We need to indicate the water supply is the selection pressure. The rainfall implies that the water supply would be a problem faced by the plants in the grassland. Therefore, we need to say that water supply is the selection force which drives the evolution of root depth because the water supply in the grassland is limited. And then we need to explain why the greater root depth in the tall grasses would be an advantage. And then we need to realize the facts that mentioned in the question. There is no tree in the grassland. So you see that because of the moderate rainfall, so the tree cannot survive in this area due to the lower supply of the water. And then we need to recall the function of the root related to the rainfall. Surely we are talking about the water absorption. So you can imagine that for the tall grasses, if they still choose to survive in this habitat, they have to adapt this habitat in order to survive. Otherwise, if they cannot evolve a deep root system, they will also die out. Just like the tree, no more tree in this grassland, right? Therefore, a greater root depth have a selective advantage. It is the favorable characteristic for the deep root system, enabling the grasses to obtain more water from underground. Therefore, I need to recall the concept of the evolution. So firstly, we have the variation exists among the individual within a species. There may be deep root system and shallow root system, and then the individual compete with one another for limited resources. In this time, we have the water supply, and it is the struggle for survival. And then the individuals with the favorable characteristic, which is the deep root system in this question, they have a higher chance for survival and reproduction. It is survival of the fittest, and then they can pass the favorable characters on to the offspring. That means they can pass the favorable characteristic deep root system to the offspring. And over many generations, the action of the natural selection leads to the evolution of a new species. We need to recall the key terms and the action verbs. Favorable characteristic, survival, reproduction, pass the favorable characteristic on to the offspring. And then for part 2, in terms of the energy usage of the plants, explain why having a shallow root system for the cereal crops is considered as an advantage to the farmer. So we need to relate the use of the energy in the plant to the yield of the cereal crop. So the concept is that because they have the shallow root system, it means that less energy is needed for the development of the root. And on the other hand, more energy can be allocated to the development of the shoot. And when we talk about the shoot, we need to realize that how does the shoot make contribution to the high yield of the cereal crops. And then we need to relate the food production to the food storage in the seed. A better developed shoot will have a higher photosynthesis rate to make more food for the development of the seed and fruit. Therefore, there will be higher yield will be obtained with the same amount of energy output. Part B, we need to study the photomicrograph here. So this photomicrograph shows the cross-section of the root of a cereal crops. So we have the structure X and Y, and with the good practice, structure X is the xylem vessel, structure Y is the root hair cells. For part B1, complete the table to show how an observable feature of the structure X and Y is related to its function. So for this question, is checking us the skills about the interpretation of the photomicrograph, and then it checks us the concept about the adaptive features, how the structure and function are interrelated. So watch the video for revision about the structure, features, and function. So we go through the structure one by one. For the xylem vessel, they have a large empty lumen or a hollow tube. It offers less resistance to water transport. So you cannot say that, oh, the xylem vessel, they are hollow, so that's why they can transport water. Yes, they can transport water. It is the function. But now we are talking about the adaptive features. Therefore, you should say that they can transport the water better. How can they transport the water better? Because the xylem vessel, they are hollow, therefore there will be less resistance for the thicker or thickened cell wall. It can prevent the collapse of the xylem vessel. So our main target is the xylem vessel, not just the plant. Surely, the thick and lignified cell wall, it can provide mechanical support to the plant, yes. However, now we are talking about the xylem vessel first. For the other feature, no end wall between the cells, we cannot tell this in this question, because in this part because in this photomicrograph it's just the cross section of the root. We do not see the whole tube, therefore we cannot tell that there is no end wall. For the root hair, so we need to talk about the slender, elongated root hair. It can penetrate the space between the soil particles, or we can say that increase the surface area for water or minerals absorption, because the root hair are long and fine. So for the other structure, the root is highly branched, the epidermis is not covered with the cuticle, or numerous root hairs are present on the root. So that's the feature we cannot observe from this photomicrograph. Therefore, we cannot answer them. And then for part 2, it's about the water absorption. Explain how water is transported from the structure Y to structure X. In this question, we need to recall the movement of the water molecules from the root hair to xylem vessel. Surely, we need to recall the concept of the osmosis. The definition of the osmosis is that the net movement of water molecules across a differentially permeable membrane from a region of a higher water potential to a region of lower water potential. After we mention the terms water potential and the definition of the osmosis, we need to tell that. Therefore, we need to realize the establishment of the water potential gradient from root hair to xylem vessels. So for the xylem vessels, there is a lower water potential, and for the root hair cells, there is a higher water potential. So it makes that the net movement of the water molecules moving from the root hair cell structure Y to the xylem vessel structure X. Finally, we need to recall the importance of the transpiration. Why transpiration so important to the plants? Because it creates the transpiration pool for the transport of water and minerals in the xylem vessel. And the pool also helps the absorption of water by the root. Therefore, we can combine the transpiration and the osmosis concept together to answer this question. So you can recall the 3 steps of the examination skills for the osmosis question. And because this question is not talking about the potato strips and the rubber cell, therefore I just cut out 1 step to make it 2 steps. First step, you need to state and explain the water potential difference in the structures Y and X, and then describe the net movement of water molecules from the structures Y to the structure X. First of all, transpiration pool continues to draw water from cells adjacent to structure X, lowering the water potential of the neighboring cells. And absorption of water at Y maintains a high water potential there. Therefore, for the root hair cell, high water potential. For the cells surrounding the xylem vessel, there is a lower water potential. And then the water will move from Y to X along the water potential gradient across the root. Let's talk about the curriculum mapping. This question starts from the root system, asks us about 2 concepts, air pollution and water absorption. For air pollution, this question doesn't ask that much about the mechanism of the speciation. However, you can watch the video for revision first. And then for the air pollution, there are several key terms for us to do revision. Isolation, genetic variation, natural selection, artificial selection, and then survival of the fittest, and then also for the mechanism, we call the idea survival, reproduction, pass on the favorable characteristic. However, how can we select the favorable characteristic? Any criteria for us to choose? And then we have the term selection pressure. It is the criterion for us to choose. For example, water supply, light intensity, temperature, and so on and so forth. And then for the water absorption, surely we talk about the root. You need to recall the adaptive features, the structure, function. Watch this video to gather some idea of the adaptive features in the plants. And then we ask about the transpiration, about the osmosis, about the transpiration pool. So you can see that a lot of questions in the past. It is a very hot topic. Do revision for the transpiration osmosis. And then any possible question variation. In this question, we talk about the transpiration, evolution, and then for the root. So one of the variation, it can ask you that state and explain 3 adaptive features of the cactus to allow it to survive in the desert, which is a dry areas with the little rainfall, very hot during the day. So the hint is that for the root, stem, leaves, every part, tell me 1 adaptive features. Remember to explain. Leave your answer in the comment section to see that is your concept clear or not.